It's time for another Dirt Daily, and we are back at Steer Smarts out here in Michigan building a truck that's going to be a bar at my buddy Tony's wedding. Tony works for Steer Smarts, and I built the bed part of the truck at home. Then I drove across America. I picked up the cab part, which is a Jeep CJ-10. It's actually kind of an airplane tug. It's basically like a CJ-7, but just squashed down to be a regular cab for a pickup truck. Now, the last episode, we tore the CJ-10 apart and we took the cab off. It's been out getting pressure washed, blasting out all the old headliner and gross junk that's in it. Plus, we found that the floors of it are pretty rusty. Not a major concern right now, but definitely something that's gonna have to be dealt with. Then we started tearing apart the chassis. The chassis had this big metal bed on the back. That got deleted. We dropped the transfer case, which doesn't even have high range. That got deleted. And we're going to work on that engine and transmission, which is a Nissan diesel. It's called an SD33 diesel, non-turbo, not very much power. But luckily, behind that transmission, we have a TorqueFlite 727, a automatic transmission that will probably eat up most of the power that that engine makes, but that's a strong transmission, so it should hold up to all the torque that that little engine makes. So what's next on the list? Well, at the end of the last episode, we got this, and this is our new chassis. It's a Jeep JL. It's a Wrangler Unlimited. So it's a four-door Wrangler. It is a 116-inch wheelbase. So 116-inch wheelbase, little tiny regular cab, and then this 6.5-foot bed should make for a really cool size little truck. This is basically the truck that Jeep isn't building these days. Everybody gets a Gladiator that has 4 doors and it's a 130-inch wheelbase. We're gonna build the little truck. It's not gonna look like a new Wrangler at all though. It's got this wacky CJ-10 cab that has this kind of big rig looking front fenders with the headlights, square headlights out on the fenders, and 10-slot grill. We pulled that off last time, and so that's sitting back there on the ground underneath everything. This episode, we're gonna start building the chassis. We have some new axles to go under it. We have big, beefy Dana 1-ton axles. We have a Dana 60 for the front. Actually, the 60 for the front is on the way. It's being built right now and it's supposed to show up any day now. The rear is a Dana 80. So this is an ultimate Dana 80, big, beefy, heavy-duty stuff. Why so big and beefy if we're only running this tired little Nissan diesel? Well, here's the cool thing. Once I get this into California as a diesel, I never have to smog it again. So if we want to build up this diesel, put more power through it, do whatever we want to do to this vehicle, we're smog-free, which is awesome. So we are going to build this up with 1-ton axles. Plus, it reiterates one of my favorite recipes. Over axle, under engine. Like my clampy truck that everybody loves, my little Toyota, that has 1-ton axles with a little 4-cylinder Toyota engine. I like that recipe because you can just stand on the gas and peel out and you don't have to worry about the axles that are underneath this thing. I'm not gonna claim that this Nissan diesel is gonna be impressive, but it'll be fun for a while, and then maybe down the road we'll put something beefier in it as far as horsepower. So today's plan is get the axles under this. We have a front axle here that we can borrow for mock-up. We're gonna put our 80, well, the 80's already arrived, so we can mock that up. Then we wanna set the axles under the chassis at full stuff, like full compression. And the reason you do that is you want the axle all the way up against the frame where it would be when the axle would, if the suspension would completely compress. Say you come off a jump or off a ledge, the front suspension compresses or the rear suspension compresses. You want to know where that axle is going to go when everything bottoms out, because then when you put your engine in, you know that the axle isn't going to smash into the oil pan. And we're going to be doing a lot of that. We're going to be trying to guesstimate, modify, make this engine and transmission and body mounts all work on this chassis. So we want to have axles at full bump, full compression, and then we can start figuring out where's the engine got to sit, do we have enough clearance, is the engine going to fit under the hood. I'm pretty sure it's all going to work, though we've never done it before, and most people haven't done something like this before. But like I said in the past, this is not 100% groundbreaking. People have built vehicles like this before. They have taken older bodies, put them on newer frames. I've done it multiple times with different vehicles. A lot of other people have done it. Most people don't stick with the old diesel. They go with something newer and more modern. We're going to wait on that for now. We're going to try and keep it CJ10-ish enough. And plus, it kind of gives it a little bit more of that Australian Outback theme that I kind of like, where it's like a diesel truck with this tray bed, and it'll look cool and funky for the party when we get up to Canada for Tony's wedding. So Tony's wedding's getting here closer and closer every day, and we need to get a truck done. So let's get to work. That's all it'll go unless I move it. I can move it over.
Okay, there you go. Okay, right there is good.
Good?
Yeah, that looks really good.
How's it look, Tony?
Woo! It's looking great.
We stayed late last night and we worked on disassembly of the CJ-10. We worked on figuring out things on the JL chassis. We put some axles under the JL chassis. They're not the ones we're actually going to use.
Donors.
But that allows us to roll the chassis back and forth. Yeah. We have the Dana Ultimate 80 here, but we have to put the brackets on that. And we'll figure that out once we have engine, transmission, and transfer case in, so you can set pinion angle. Basically, we have a lot to do. The idea is we got the cab cleaned a bit and back on the lift so we can raise it up. We have this on axles with tires so we can roll it back under here. So our next step is to try and align things and
Brackets.
start figuring out body mounts, and that will also help dictate engine mounts. Basically, we need to duplicate the CJ-10 chassis mounts on the JL to become the CJL-10. And the chassis on the JL rises up a lot more from the flat part in the middle up to the engine mount area than it does on the CJ-10.
That's
So
going to be a challenge.
we will be doing a bit, and we don't want the CJ-10 cab to look like it has a 3-inch body lift off of the frame. So we'll be lowering some things and raising things and cutting things and welding things.
I like that. That sounds fun.
All right, so we're gonna raise this up in the air, get that back under here, and start more measuring.
I like it. Let's do it.
Okay, I'll raise this up. You raise that up. I'll push this back. We might still need to just... You want to just put the floor jack under the diff and swing the whole thing over? Yeah. Yeah, there we go.
How's that?
It's pretty good. It's really good. It's going to need tweakage as we get it down lower, but
That was the run of my joke.
okay.
There were a bunch of zeros. 2 zeros.
Hey, let's lower it down just its eyeball things.
Okay, you ready?
No, grab your angle finder so we don't squash it.
Yeah. Yeah, because possibly I'm looking at it.
Where's the box? Coming. Slowly. And stop. That'll be the problem.
So problem.
But not that problem. Front's perfect. Back. How's your front arm? Is it clear? Chassis?
Yeah, totally good.
Okay.
So we just need to wipe this off. Well, we might need it, so don't wipe it off.
Yeah. I would rather, let's move it here.
Do we?
Yeah.
Scared.
I'm going to pull this corner up. You're going to pull that. And you're going to pivot. It's going to go towards you. Right on the edge. There you go.
Yep. Hey, let me know. Don't mind that.
A little more.
Let me move that. Okay, ready?
Stop. Leg it. Like all these needles.
It's a lot better than I thought.
So check this out. We could come up, this whole thing could come down another, well, 6 inches. So basically, if you look inside,
Yeah, that's the edge.
the floor goes like this.
Yeah, correct. Yep. So we can trim everything in the inside here, box it.
You could cut that out.
Yep.
And most of it's already out if you look up in here.
Yeah.
So, but what we can hopefully do is when our Nemesis body armor shows up, we could extend it, maybe use that guy to the body armor as one of the body mounts.
Oh, that's true.
So this will have to go.
Yep.
And then, but the cool thing is when that comes down, we're at about 4.5 inches. Yeah, and this hangs down maybe an inch. So depending on where you measure. So we might just have this frame rail hanging down, which is still a lot, but we need all the space for like the Atlas and transmission.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to be good. I think we're going to get it to sit down in there the way we want it to. All right. So
Let's make some marks.
Chat GPT this thing back together and go to lunch.
And movie magic, go!
So we set the CJ-10 down on the JL chassis, and it hits before it gets down really close. So like right now, the chassis is about 4 inches off, or the tub is about 4 inches off of the chassis. So we have about 10 inches hanging below the tub, which is not really ideal. We want to kind of get this tub down as close as it can to the chassis. So where is it hitting? Well, right up here, you can see this is where it's hitting first, because this is where the frame kicks up. Because the frame kicks up here and it hits the front of the tub before the back of the tub sets on the flat area. Luckily, everything behind this area is unneeded. Like the tub basically comes down and kicks in, but the floor of the tub is set at an angle. So if you look at that side over there, let me show you with the flashlight. I've already cut the front section out, but the floorboard is still there, and it's almost perfect to the same angle as the chassis. At where the chassis kicks up, the frame kicks up, the tub actually follows that same type of angle. So now I'm going to come in here. There's a Sharpie mark right there, and I'm basically going to cut all of this stuff out. I don't think any of these little studs that are on here are used for anything. Looking through the back photos when we disconnected everything, nothing was attached there. There is a body mount that hangs out down in here, but we're going to have to come up with a different body mount situation because all of this needs to be removed. But once it's removed, that'll bring us down 4 or 5 inches, and that's what we want. We want to get the tub down on, if it's not on the frame, it's like just a little bit above the frame to keep the center of gravity and everything low. Once we have the tub able to move all the way down, then we can adjust it front to back, figure out where our grill goes, and start looking at engine. And nothing's going to get attached until everything is mocked up. But it's like chipping away at the parts we don't need to try and get it to sit just how we want it to sit. So I'm going to raise it back up and start cutting. Now we're talking. So we set the front clip on here, the fenders and the grill, and they're crashing into the frame before they get down. Like if you see this hole right here, this mounting hole where my finger is, it needs to be way down there. So all of the fenders and the grill need to sink down around the frame some more. So I've marked the inside of the fender right around here so that it can wrap around the frame. There's also a shock tower on the outside of this fender up inside here. On that side, there's the steering gearbox that's hitting the fender. So we're basically going to lift it back off, butcher a whole bunch of this sheet metal out of the way so that we can get this down to line up with these bolt holes. There's still going to be a little bit of maybe bringing the cab up some to keep everything happy once it's all bolted together, because we need to support the frame in the, or support the grill in the front, or we may be notching the frame section at the front of the car, which isn't really a problem because all the suspension, steering, and links and everything are behind the radiator. So it would really just need to be enough beef up there to support the radiator, well, and also a winch when we get to that. So, but step one, cut this out, try to get the fenders and grill to sit down more and line up with where they're supposed to be on the tub, and then we'll figure out the rest of it when we get there. All right, I need to show you guys something. I've been working on the front clip. Here's the front clip, it's laying on the ground. Now, this is interesting right here. So this is where it bolts to the tub of the CJ-10, which correlates with this right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you see these 4 holes? And then at the bottom, you see how there's like that little space there? 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, here is the 4th hole. And then there's all of this tail of the fender that hangs below the tub. Because if you guys remember, there was these running boards. And so this kind of flowed into those running boards. But I was looking at this and I was trying to like get it onto the frame and get it to sit down low and not be super high. And then I had this idea. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highline the fenders, because there's this tail that's hanging out here, right here, which is a little bit hard to tell because it's like standing up on its nose. But there's this extra 2.5 inches of fender that hangs down below the tub. So what I did was, I can show you on this side, I cut that so it's flat. You can kind of see here. I cut that, there's a cut right there. And so I'm gonna move the whole fender up 2.5 inches. So like this used to be the top of the fender right here at the body line. I'm gonna move it up to there, which you would think will look funny, and it might look a little bit funny, but it's still pretty much vertical, about 2.5 inches up from that body line. So if I move everything up, the bottom of the flare of the fender will line up with the bottom of the tub, and it'll raise the whole fender up 2.5 inches, which will give us 2.5 more inches of tire clearance when this thing's laid over. I know it's kind of hard to understand because everything's like on the ground and laying on its side, but trust me, this will bring the fenders up 2.5 inches. The body line that used to go right here and go straight to the top of the fender will now step up 2.5 inches to the top of the fender, and I will have to go to the hood and cut 2.5 inches out of the bottom of the hood where it sits on the fender, but it'll raise the fenders up and we'll have 2.5 more inches of tire clearance so that we don't need to lift this thing to the moon to fit big tires on it. It still has kind of this wraparound fender wheel well opening, so it's still going to be tight front to back, but we'll probably end up trimming some of the front as well. So highlining the fenders is the plan. So this front frame horn is bent. We didn't notice it when we picked it up, and it's not bent a lot, but if you measure the frame right back here, you can notice there's like the main frame up to this big cross member, and then there's this kind of like smaller tube coming out from there. And right here where this tube comes out, we notice two things. One, there's a dent right there, and then two, if you measure the inside of this frame, it's just a hair under 28 back here where it goes into the main frame, and way out here it's 28 3/4 almost. So what I did was I came in with the cutoff wheel and I just cut a slice across the top, down the middle, and then across the bottom, leaving the outside where it is. And now I'm going to grab a hammer and tap that and see if it closes it up to 28, and then we'll just weld that back up. You could also put like a big ratchet strap or something, but because I'm pretty sure, like even if you just look down this one still looks straight. You can probably see it on camera, that's pretty straight. But then if you come over here and you look down this one, you can see it's like, so I'm gonna grab a hammer and see if cutting that little notch was enough. It'd be really nice if we had like a big pipe clamp, but you can definitely see it closing up. Man, I can just close it up just by leaning into it. But I don't think that is enough to get this to 28. No. So I'm going to bring the cutoff wheel. I'm going to shave just a little bit more. I would rather shave too much and have to like stack it up in there with weld than not shave enough and not have it get to square. But we really just want these things to be square so that when we build the cross member or install the cross member to hold the front clip, we can just make that square. It's kind of like if you can make it square to start with, then you're not trying to compensate for everything. Which is kind of funny. Remember when I was building that bed and I wasn't really worried about it being square? The other thing you could do right here is you could use a thicker cutoff wheel and open that up. I'm just trying to shave a little bit off. Look at that. I can just close that gap up. I think we're probably there. I'm going to grab a ratchet strap, tighten this up, and then we'll have to tack that in place and then burn it in. Probably V-notch it a little bit so we get a good weld on it. This is not, all this is doing, this whole section, is supporting the grill and the radiator and supporting any sort of bumper. And when we get to the bumper, we may add more gussets over this to compensate for where we had to cut it and weld it. But it's not like all the stuff back here that is actually holding your suspension, holding your steering. Like you could literally cut this frame off right here, if you could support the radiator and you didn't have a winch, you really wouldn't need these at all. They're just kind of to put a bumper on if you need a bumper or you want a bumper. All right, ratchet strap. Here's one. So when I picked up the CJ-10, I couldn't get the engine to start. And the guy that had sold it to me was like, oh, it's been running. And he actually had sent me videos of it running, but it wasn't running when I picked it up, which is kind of nerve-wracking when we want to reuse this engine. So today's project is we're going to try and make the thing run so that when we spend all the energy to put it into the Jeep, at least we have an idea if it's actually going to run. And in order to do that, we are hot wiring everything. One of the things we noticed when we tried to make it run when I picked it up is that the starter would keep cranking. So PSC has a kill switch, and the idea is that if the thing cranks and keeps cranking, he can shut it off. Eric is going to run the fuel pump on the far side. Basically, this injection pump has an arm that will shut off fuel, but it also has a starting position and a run position. So it's a 3-position arm for fuel. So the idea is I will jump start this to the signal point on the starter solenoid. It'll crank. Eric will have it set to the start position. It'll have fuel. We have the fuel hose just running randomly into the fuel tank, which is sitting on the fuller over there. And cross your fingers, it'll fire right up and make a bunch of noise and shake and rattle and smoke. And then at least we'll know that it'll do that. So otherwise, what are we going to do? Just go buy a 392, something boring like that?
Sounds like the plan.
All right. So I'm going to start with my power probe and see if I can put 12 volts to this. So you're going to turn that to power on. You have that set to start.
Yep.
And for some reason, I can't get the power probe to give it enough voltage, so I'm going to jump it with this screwdriver. Okay, shut it off. So, I guess we don't know if we're actually getting fuel all the way to it, but we assume we are. I don't know.
Let's try again.
Here at Fred and Eric and Piercy's Diesel Shop, Diesel Brothers. Ready?
Yep.
Okay, kill it. Is there anything we're missing here? That's pumping fuel into this filter. Should be coming back out to the injection pump. Maybe what we do is we just watch and see if fuel's coming out the return.
Yeah. Yeah, so you want to just pull that up, Eric? While you,
Yeah.
I guess you got to be kind of...
Fuel, electric, fuel,
Not on the same side.
dancing monkey in the middle. All right, are we ready?
Yep.
No? Okay. So,
Dripped like 2 drips, maybe. So I think it's still trying to prime.
okay. I think the next step we will put a blast of starting fluid down there. So. Let's see what it does.
Oh, waking up. Oh, wait, I didn't drop it back to run maybe in time.
Try. Are you shutting it off?
No, I'm not.
Okay. So you're still on power.
Still on. Oh, yeah.
Your next goal is to give it a little throttle when it starts running and be ready to shut that off.
You got it.
Ready? Oh, wait. One more blast.
All right.
All right, so it's running, but it's running off a e-slur and it's not running off the fuel. Yeah, and I wonder if this is like a bleeder.
Probably.
You want to ask Google how to bleed the injection pump on an SD33?
I think I actually might have that.
There's obviously a step to like, or a system of like how to prime and bleed injection pump.
What is that procedure?
You want preparation,
Is there like
like a way to prime it or whatever?
prime or bleeding injection pump? Like this little guy is obviously the priming pump, and that's doing its job.
There are 2 bleed screws here and here.
Yep.
Start with the forward one. Okay.
Yeah.
Pump the hand fuel pump.
Nice.
Then tighten.
Uh-huh.
When there's a steady stream of air, repeat with this one.
That's
Oh, look at that.
There's definitely air in there. It's bubbling.
We think we solved it?
It's only one way to check.
Right. Yeah.
This made this a lot easier.
Don't worry, Tony, your wedding can still happen. It's day 6 of the Jeep build that we're building for Tony's wedding, and things are moving slowly, but they're moving ahead. We have a few parts that should be showing up today. Yesterday we welded motor mounts in on the JL chassis. Tony is feeling a little under the weather, so he needs to rest up a little bit because he's got a wedding, but more importantly, he has a Jeep truck he has to help me finish. And today we have a bunch of stuff to do. Hopefully our suspension kit, we're missing a few final pieces for that, so that should show up in the shipping today. We're gonna start prepping the rear axle. It is a Dana Ultimate 80, Dana Spicer Ultimate 80, and we have an RTEC truss. It's not a truss so much as like mounting brackets for the suspension. So we're gonna start prepping that axle. We really wanna get that axle under the chassis and get the suspension on and the front axle under it so that we can measure for drive shafts. Drive shafts is something we're gonna order from Tom Woods, and we wanna have all the measurements figured out as quickly as possible, like in the next day or two, so that we can order drive shafts. But the body is still up in the air. We wanna get the engine and transmission mounted in there, exactly where it's gonna live, so that then we can drop the body, fine tune those mounts, and then get the suspension under it. So we're kind of fighting on 3 fronts, plus I have one of my 3-star generals, Canadian paramilitary guy right here, kind of sick. I think you need more maple syrup.
More maple syrup.
All right, let's get to work. We are working on the mounts for the Ultimate Dana 80 from Dana Spicer. So here's this thing about this axle. As of right now, Dana is offering this 80 as a builder axle, which means it doesn't come with any brackets. I think they're thinking that most people that are gonna step up to an 80 are gonna build a custom 4-link, or they're gonna do leaf springs, or whatever they're gonna do. They are not offering it currently with Jeep brackets already on it. The cool thing is that RTEC is a company that makes trusses for a lot of different axles. They are offering a kit for the Ultimate 80. We are probably the first people outside of RTEC to get our hands on this kit. So it's kind of prototype early development, which isn't really a problem. We like working with companies and helping them develop new cool stuff. However, it is a little bit more work than just uncrating the axle. Like the front Ultimate 60 has all the brackets on it already, and it bolts right in. So we do have to assemble the bracketry and weld it together. So what I'm doing now is tacking the bracketry together so that we can mock it up on the axle, get it underneath the Jeep, and get our suspension set up so we can measure for drive shafts. Because again, drive shafts are the time-sensitive piece that we need to get ordered so that they are here. Here's the trick about tacking projects together. This is the way I've learned it, so take it with a grain of salt. I always try to tack somewhere that I can get to it with a cutoff wheel. There's these cool little keys. If you look down in here, you can see there's keys where this bracket is set up to line up. Don't tack it in there, because like if you look in here inside this one, you can see the key. If I burn that in, even if it's just a tack and it's wrong, like I'm not gonna be able to cut that out easily. So just put your tacks right out here at the end, right there at that end, maybe one somewhere in here that you can get a cutoff wheel to it and cut it off. Also, if you tack it in the middle of your welds, as you're welding this, all pretty stacking dimes, gonna be on TIG Master, MIG Master Facebook group showing off your welds, you're gonna have a little bump right there in the middle of the welds, and it's gonna look kind of so, or you have to like be running at one rate and then kind of jump over that and keep going. It'll never look as good as if you tack it at the ends and then weld it all together. So a couple little tricks for tacking. Like I've always said, I'm not a custom fabricator by trade, but I have done it for a bunch over the years. So hopefully these little tips help you when you're putting together your axle. All right, we're gonna tack this, mock it up, give our feedback to our tech, and hopefully get ready to swing this big thing underneath that chassis so we can measure for drive shafts. Derp, derp, derp. Toledo.
What's that?
Some guy down in Toledo doing the same thing, just welding up Jeep parts. Any other axle, I would have like clamped this thing to the table.
Yeah.
So it didn't like pull the tubes and like keep the housing.
Yeah. What we'll be doing is we'll probably be bringing the tail back and forth, and I'll be going up and down. Okay. And these are your two bolts on the side, after that side.
2 bolts, 3 nuts. How does that work?
The math doesn't matter.
Oh, that's pretty close too.
Bring me that long bolt in your hand.
Well, that sounds good.
Yeah, I'd say they're all pretty close.
Something's fishy.
So I just gotta go down a little bit.
You hold that, and I'll bring her down a scooch.
want the transmission down too? Actually,
No.
I don't know that there's any weight on that right now, to be honest with
Yeah, I think that your adjuster's holding it. Yeah, so tighten those up. Should just be 9/16. Mike, you didn't yell at Tony enough to put the wrenches away.
The 9/16 was in the 15 spot.
Just like Carvalho to try and metric size us.
We like our freedom fractions.
Header. 23. That's 24-ish. It's the morning of day 7, and we are busting tail on the Jeep truck, flatbed bar, wedding bar, beer counter. We've been playing with a bunch of different names. I am affectionately calling this the CJL-10 because it's a CJ10 on a JL chassis. So maybe you have a better name, but for now, CJL-10 is what we're building. We stayed late last night and worked on the Ultimate Dana 80. Put the RockJock brackets on, and like I said, this is a brand new kit from RockJock. 99% perfect right out of the box. We did have one little issue with a parking brake cable getting into an upper link mount. RockJock is already redesigning that one bracket. So right now it has 3 brackets and a track bar. That axle needs to go under the chassis today. We also need to get the transfer case on the back of the transmission today and get some coil springs under the chassis above the axles today because we want to measure for drive shafts. We're going to use an Old Man Emu suspension kit. It's about a 2.5 to 3.5 inch amount of lift, depending on if you have a Sport or a Rubicon. If you had a Rubicon, it would be 2.5 inches. If you had a Sport, it would be 3.5 inches. That's all because the fenders are a little bit lower on a Sport. This is just for a JL Unlimited. We're not 100% sure how much lift we're going to get because we have a diesel engine, we have a giant heavy flatbed made out of 2-inch barn wood, and so I kind of think we're going to be right about the same height as a stock JL tub, but it may be a little bit higher, a little bit lower. That being said, we need to get those coils between the axle and frame today. So today's projects are, I'm going to build a transmission mount. I want to mount the transmission in there. We have the motor mounts in. We put the engine back in last night. So I want to build transmission mount today so that then we can stab the Atlas onto the back of the Torque Flight 727. And then we are one step closer to measuring for drive shafts. The 80 can go in with the 3 link mounts and the track bar mount so that we can set that up on coils. Like I said the other day, we were waiting for our front 60. The front 60 just showed up. Front 60 showed up? Front 60 showed up. We have our front axle now. We are running 488 gears because I'm actually running a 4-speed Atlas. I have a 4-speed Atlas that was in a very old project called the Ultimate FJ Cruiser. This is something we built back in, I want to say, 08. We built this FJ Cruiser, and then it had to be dismantled and returned to Toyota, and I kept the Atlas, 4-speed Atlas, and the idea is the 4-speed Atlas will end up in the CJL-10 with 488 gears in the axles. So we have lots of low range gearing options, plus
the 4-speed in the Atlas should work out great. The diesel's not gonna rev really high, but for now we'll make it work with 488s. Maybe down the road we can go to a bigger tire, smaller tire, whatever we wanna do. So I'm building a transmission mount. Mike is working on some body mount mock-up parts to be ready when we set the body on it. And after I get the transmission mounted, Mike and I will jump on axle swap and transfer case install so that we can order drive shafts. Tony, I'm not gonna say he's nervous about his wedding, but he's a little under the weather, has a little bellyache, maybe a little cough. Maybe he's just at home picking out which color tuxedo he's gonna wear to the wedding. Either way, Tony's not here today, so it's just gonna be me and this guy over here. Will you turn, see there? That's Mike. Yeah, do some cool dancing, Mike. So we are gonna get to work. All right, let's get to work. Okay, race fans, transmission mount is in. We built it off of 2 cross members. This cross member, the transmission cross member, we thought we'd be able to just weld something cool off of it. Turns out it's aluminum, and we don't have the technology with us to do that, or the time. So we found this other little baby cross member that runs kind of right underneath the 727 pan of the automatic, and we built a piece that spreads between the two. It's probably better this way because it makes a little tiny skid plate also. And we set everything in there, and our engine and transmission is at the angle that we wanted all along, which is 7 degrees. So when this is at 0, that's at 7 degrees back. So we're doing good. This is the Atlas 4-speed. I brought it from home. This was left over from a project years and years ago. I took it back to Advanced Adapters and had them spruce it up, change the input gear to match the back of the Torque Flight 727. And ironically, my old CJ-10 project that I gave away, like got rid of, didn't finish, this transfer case was mocked up in that at one time. I remember cutting out the floor to make this fit, which we may need to cut out the floor, but I don't know. This floor is pretty rotten anyways. There's a bunch of rust underneath the feet of the passengers. So I've already ordered some patch panels for that. And basically we're gonna have to do some body floor work to make it all happy. But next step is to get this set in here, give it a little bit of angle so that our front drive shaft clears cross members, but also clears transmission at full stuff and cross members at full droop. So I kind of think it's a little high right now, and might come down just a little bit. The Atlas is in. Now we're going to put the 80 in the back of the chassis. So we put some 37-inch tires on it. And it's rolling. Crash!
Wow.
All right, so we need to raise the chassis up. Oh. You keep going up. Just kind of watch stuff so that like nothing gets wonky. This is what I think we should do, Mike.
Sure.
Put the front tires on, set it on the tires so the tires are holding all the weight and not jack stands. Then raise up the chassis and set it on the bump stop extensions.
Okay.
Then we will have an idea of like exactly where things would land in a worst case scenario. And that's a good spot to measure drive shafts, see if things are gonna clear or if we're gonna have any problems. And then we'll put coils in, measure drive shafts again, and then we will have probably higher than ride height and all the way at full compression. We won't know full droop unless we put shocks on, and don't really think they need full droop. I think we kind of need those numbers first.
Okay.
So,
I like it.
2 more tires.
We have a rolling chassis.
We have a rolling chassis with drivetrain. We got the Old Man Emu coils in. These coils are a 2.5 to 3.5 inch coil, but that's for a regular JL. We don't know what it's gonna actually do for this truck. It's sitting up pretty high, but that's actually pretty good. We can measure for drive shafts. Our front drive shaft is gonna have to be as small a diameter as Tom Woods is willing to make for us, because the driver's side of that transmission has cooling lines coming out of it and a bunch of shifter stuff. We can deal with some of that. We might change our cooling lines from hard lines to just hoses. Our shifters, we might have to go to a cable shifter for the 727, but all of that we can deal with. The rear is looking good. It's sitting up really high. It's probably closer to droop or halfway between ride height and droop, but we'll measure. We've already measured at full compression, and now we'll measure at this height, and we'll take those dimensions and we'll call Tom Woods and get some drive shafts coming. We've kind of chipped off everything we wanted to do today. We got the 80 under the rear, we got the cross member built, a transmission mount, and we got the coil springs in so we could measure for a drive shaft. So it's been a win. It's kind of crazy. I'm about to leave Steer Smarts to go to Smoky Mountain Jeep Invasion, which is a big Jeep show on the East Coast. I'm gonna go down there and check it out and hang out with the folks from Steer Smarts and Warren. And then after that, I need to go to Pennsylvania and not come directly back to the shop. I haven't been home to the family farm in a while, and I need to get home and see the folks. So the next couple segments will probably be Tony and Mike working on things, so they'll keep you updated. And then when I get back, we will see where it is. We're chipping away at it. I think we're down to about 5 weeks to the wedding. And some of those weeks, I'm not gonna be here. So, and then I think the final week, Tony might not be here because he might be, I don't know, getting his hair cut and his mustache shaved. It looks good. It's sitting pretty high, but it'll all settle down once it has the weight of the cab on it and the bed on it. 37-inch tires. These are not the final tires, but that is probably the size that we're gonna go with. So it's kind of looking like how it's gonna look, and it looks pretty cool. So, all right, that's it for this Dirt Daily. I'm gonna wrap it up. We will see you guys in a couple weeks for the next installment on the CJL-10, or whatever you want to call it. It's going to be the dance floor, the wedding bar. It's going to be done in a couple weeks because we got to get it to the wedding. We'll see you guys next time. I think it's pretty cool.